Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible is really not a grimoire. It is simply more or less a outline for a way of life, a mode of thought, a paradigm of predation. It is cynicism taken to its ultimate level. It is Ayn Rand with ritual, as Anton Szandor LaVey himself said. Now, in the case of the Necronomicon, children are provided with what would be known as a kind of unbalanced ritual system that has no history or tradition behind it. It is promoted as a Sumerian-sourced book. Nothing could be further from the truth. It has nothing to do with the original pagan magics and everything to do with satanic magic with which Simon's or Peter Levinda's Necronomicon has become inextricably linked. So in terms of that book, one of these days I'll go into the kind of repercussions that children suffer when they play with that book specifically. They are basically given raw materials for spell work, and they come down with all kinds of nightmares, horrible things happening to them, members of their family dying, etc. Now, you could dismiss all of this as being the admonitions of some goofy, misguided, super Christian like Bob Larson. Nothing could be further from the truth. Everyone knows that, of all people, I am probably fairly irreverent in many respects. But when it comes to the dangers of something like this, I really have to say that what would you call an individual who passed out loaded firearms to kids on the street? You would have to call him irresponsible, to say the least, and at that would be disingenuous. He would be a true villain. He would be evil. That's Peter Levinda. So I hope that puts that into some perspective for you. It brings us back to what we were talking about with all this ritual, the dynastic descent from the house of David through the Solomonic dynasty of Ethiopia. And that brings us to the argument between Gary States and Dutch Blazer. Now, Dutch Blazer is a great guy. He's produced two sons who serve currently in our United States Marine Corps. He produced a daughter who married a Marine. His father served in the United States Army. So we've got a man who's surrounded by a patriotic family that has produced people who have sacrificed their lives to serve yourself. And he needs to be treated with the utmost respect. He's got a very stereotypical American perspective on Israel, the nation state as it stands today, as something we should stand by 100% as the United States. The logic being that we are a Christian nation and that Israel is the covenant people of God returned to the Holy Land, and that therefore we must support them basically in the name of God and country. So that, I think, would suffice it in such a manner that he would agree with my diagnostic or my summation. Gary States, on the other hand, like many postmodern Americans, is very disenamored with much of Israel's policies, which are definitively, by the definition of the term, genocidal or have been. Now, what's going on currently in Gaza, Lebanon, various other areas of the Middle East that border Israel directly? People could argue, I would even argue, that much of the damage, as horrific and unspeakable as it is, and the photographs are, you lose a little bit of your soul every time you look at the children who are mutilated in the Gaza Strip by Israeli bombing. There's no way any human being who was sane could look at that and rationalize that as a positive. That, however, in the most detached and heartless of pragmatic or practical military terms, would be called collateral damage. Genocidal or ethnic cleansing would be the phases of Israeli state establishment in which Palestinians were ethnically cleansed by gunpoint by the thousands. Many died during expulsion. This we could define by the textbook as genocidal. So we have a nation state with a history of genocide that is recent enough where the perpetrators are still alive, never tried by the Nuremberg Code, never tried by the laws of international cognizance, such as the Geneva Convention. They are allowed to act with impunity to a great extent because no one recognizes them as a nation state. And yes, you heard me right. No one other than Costa Rica and El Salvador recognize Israel as a nation state. Canada, the United States, Russia, Japan, nobody else recognizes Israel as a nation state. This is why all of the embassies are established in Tel Aviv-Yafo, because Tel Aviv-Yafo is the financial capital of Israel, and Israel is acknowledged as what would be called a fiscal state or a financial state of the world with a great influence on the world market through Wall Street or London. But no embassies are to be found in Yerushalayim or Jerusalem. All that are to be found there are consulates. So when you look this up in the dictionary, you will see absolutely nothing but a lie. You will look up within the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the Encyclopedia Britannica. Now, the Jewish diaspora and Israel together dominate media to such a profound extent that when you look books up that you trust, that you feel to be the golden mean, the gold standard of truth, you will find a lie. They will say, Yerushalayim or Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. It's not true. It's not recognized as such by any nation state other than the two that I mentioned, basically Costa Rica and El Salvador. They're both Central American nations. I'm trying to remember exactly which ones. I'm sure it's those two. Might be Guatemala, might be one of them. Maybe it's Guatemala and Belize or something like that. I mean, it's literally, not to denigrate those peoples, but it's literally nations that two nations on earth that literally have no effect on anyone other than the people who are living within their borders. So that's what we mean by the fallacy of Israel as a nation state that's recognized. Okay, so the rest of the world doesn't recognize them as a nation state. You find nothing but lies about what their capital is in terms of dictionaries or encyclopedias. Whatever they say in the dictionary or encyclopedia is not honored by nation states as they exist over the rest of the planet's surface. So you have no real source of reality when it comes to Israel or its history. But let me try and qualify this even further, because this is where many Americans come from the Dutch Blazer angle, that we are dealing with a return to the Holy Land of the people of God, the children of Abraham. Now, the original children of Abraham were mean enough, as was the God they worshipped, who was, of course, Yahweh, or Jehovah, as it's often mispronounced, but the God of Abraham. Now, God of Abraham, of course, is the same God which I worship as a Christian. I was inducted or sworn via battlefield, shall we say, christening, in security to the service of the royal dynasty of Yugoslavia, the sons of King Karađorđević, whose death date anniversary approaches. And when I consigned onto them through a security contract, they would not abide by a non-Christian providing them security. So at that point, I was de facto forced to either forego the job or the contract, which was an enormous boon to my resume to stand guard to royalty, or I would submit myself to conversion to Christianity. So I converted to the Serbian Orthodox Church. So I am indeed a Christian. Now, it is very important to emphasize that the God of the Old Testament had a covenant with the people of Israel. The God of the New Testament is the God of Christians. That is the God who, through the incarnation into Christ and his death and resurrection established a covenant with everybody. Now, you will notice the change in the mannerisms and the behavior of the New Testament Yahweh, or Jehovah. And you will notice the temperament and the behavior towards humanity changes abruptly